William says he and his family are looking to the future. I want to create a world in which my son is proud of what we do. I hope we don't go back to some of the practices in the past that, Harry and I had to grow up in. It sounds like the monarchy will be shifting in a slightly different direction. I think it's safe to say that change is on my agenda. A sudden announcement at Buckingham Palace stunned the nation. No warning, no hint, just a few words that left hearts heavy and questions spreading faster than answers. For generations, Buckingham Palace had symbolized steadiness and authority. The royal family rocked some swanky digs. And since the British monarchy's Crown Estate owns most historic properties throughout the United Kingdom, Queen Elizabeth banks 25% of that revenue. Yet tonight, its grand halls seemed unusually heavy, as if the very walls were burdened with sorrow. What happened inside those walls that the palace could no longer hide? Stay with us as we uncover the truth behind the day that brought the monarchy to its knees. A morning that stopped the nation, that London morning started calm, as if nothing had changed. But inside the palace, things felt different. Meetings were canceled, staff moved quickly, and doors that were usually open were closed. The usual calm of palace life had disappeared. Outside, reporters sensed the change. Security moved with unusual urgency, and even the guards appeared uneasy. Whispers spread quickly. Something serious was happening behind those gates. By midday, the palace's website went temporarily offline. When it reappeared, a brief statement under the royal crest conveyed a profound truth. Loss had touched the heart of the monarchy. A deep loss had struck the royal family, and in that moment, the world seemed to pause with them. When the royal message appeared online, the world seemed to stop. There had been no warning, only a few quiet lines beneath the royal crest, speaking of loss and asking for privacy. It was brief, sincere, and unlike any statement the palace had ever released. Not distant or polished, but deeply human. Within minutes, television broadcasts cut to breaking news. Anchors spoke softly, struggling for words as screens across Britain filled with the same message. Offices fell silent, classrooms paused, even the streets outside Buckingham Palace grew still. One by one, people began to gather at the gates, some carrying flowers, others simply standing in silence, drawn by the weight of shared grief. Inside the palace, time itself seemed to slow. I speak to you today with feelings of profound sorrow. Corridors once busy with staff now echoed with quiet footsteps. A few employees stayed behind, unsure of what might come next, while others were gently dismissed. The air was heavy, not with ceremony, but with loss. By nightfall, the news had reached every corner of the world. From New York to Tokyo, headlines repeated the same few words. Tragedy within the royal family, but beyond that single statement, the palace said nothing more. Britain and the world waited, holding its breath in sorrow and disbelief. Through towns and villages, church bells tolled softly while strangers stood together in quiet reflection. The mourning was more than for a royal. It felt like the nation itself was holding its breath, and for a brief moment, across every distance and difference, hearts mourned together. As daylight began to fade, quietly gathered outside Buckingham Palace. No one told them to come. It just felt right to be near the palace. Candles flickered in the cool air, and flowers, notes, and small keepsakes were laid along the gates. Families stood side by side, some holding children close, others simply gazing up at the softly glowing palace windows. Elderly couples lingered in silence, their faces lined with memories of past reigns and royal milestones. The faint scent of candle wax and rain hung in the air, while the low hum of news crews blended into the quiet sounds of grief. Beyond London, the same wave of emotion rippled through the country. Schoolrooms fell silent as teachers tried to find the right words. Shopkeepers paused mid-sentence. Church bells began to ring across towns and villages, not by command, but by instinct. Their echoes carrying through streets and open fields, binding strangers together in a single summer moment. Online, the world joined in. Hashtags with royal names filled timelines across continents. People shared old photos, joyful moments from weddings and celebrations, reminding each other of the years this family had been part of their lives. Messages of sympathy came from presidents, musicians, and everyday citizens, proof that this loss had touched hearts far beyond Britain's borders. By nightfall, the crowd outside the palace had grown into a sea of quiet faces. Mothers comforted their children. Older hands rested gently on the cold iron gates. Police officers moved slowly among the mirrors, guiding them softly, more like guardians than enforcers. There was no noise, no anger, only the shared stillness of grief. Behind those gates, Buckingham Palace no longer felt like a fortress of power. Inside, everything had changed. The grand corridors were hushed, voices low, movements careful. Even the guards, usually statues of discipline, seemed weighed down by the sorrow that filled the air. For a moment, the palace, a symbol of strength for centuries, stood not as an icon of authority, but as a home touched by loss. And that night, as thousands stood together in silence, one truth became clear. The distance between the royals and their people had disappeared. For the first time in a long time, they grieved as one, royal hearts in mourning. Behind closed doors, senior members of the royal family gathered around a long table for an emergency meeting. The chandeliers cast a soft glow over the room, but it couldn't lighten the weight in the air. No one seemed to know what to say. Advisors spoke quietly, offering plans and protocol. Yet the look in the king's eyes made it clear. No words could ease what had happened. At the head of the table, King Charles sat motionless, his composure slipping under the strain. Years of royal discipline had taught him to remain calm in public, but this moment felt different. He wasn't a monarch commanding a nation. He was a father carrying a kind of sorrow that no crown could protect him from. I renew to you all today, alongside the personal grief that all my family are feeling, we also share with so many of you in the United Kingdom. Queen Camilla stayed close, her quiet presence offering the only comfort possible. Around them, silence lingered, deep, respectful, and unbearably real. When the meeting ended, the family walked slowly through the corridors, their footsteps echoing against marble floors that suddenly felt too large, too empty. Duty had always been their guide in difficult times, but now it provided little direction, only quiet reminders of how human they truly were. Inside, William and Catherine focused on their children, trying to keep things as normal as possible. William, usually calm, looked shaken, while Catherine stayed strong, holding the family together through the quiet sadness. For a moment, they were seen at a window, standing side by side as the sky dimmed, both lost in thought, both trying to steady themselves against a grief that words couldn't describe. Messages of sympathy began to flood in from around the world. Leaders, celebrities, and ordinary people all shared their condolences. Each message a small echo of the collective heartbreak. But inside the palace, time seemed to stand still. The sounds of daily life faded. No chatter, no clinking dishes, only the distant tick of clocks filling the silence. By nightfall, the palace lights dimmed against the London skyline. The grand residence that had long symbolized strength and tradition now seemed fragile, smaller somehow. Not a fortress of power, but a home in mourning. Behind its gates, the royal family was no longer seen as figures of ceremony or duty, but as people, a father, a mother, and their children facing loss together in the only way anyone can, quietly. And with love, a family, not just royals. For Prince William, the moment carried a deeper weight than the public could ever know. It wasn't just another royal chapter. It was a breaking point after years of quiet endurance. Those who had seen him in recent weeks sensed the strain. Fewer appearances, softer smiles, and a calm that seemed harder to hold. When the news finally reached him, William withdrew to his study at Adelaide Cottage. He sat alone for hours, his phone buzzing with unanswered messages, the weight of the world pressing on his shoulders. From his window, he watched the gardens where his children played, a simple reminder of what mattered most and of the strength he would need to face what came next. For most of his life, William had been taught to remain composed no matter what storms surrounded him. Every movement, every expression, every word was watched by millions. Over time, calmness became his shield. But that day, the shield slipped. The man who stepped before the cameras later wasn't the poised future king. He was a son, a husband, and a father holding back tears. His eyes were tired, his voice unsteady, and the silence between his words said more than any statement could. Standing beside him, Princess Catherine offered quiet strength. She didn't speak much, but the gentle way her hand brushed his was enough to steady him. Together, they faced the cameras, visibly shaken, yet determined to show unity in the midst of heartbreak. William thanked the public for their compassion, speaking slowly and deliberately. He paused often, his words catching in his throat as he asked for privacy, not as a royal command, but as a plea from a man trying to protect his family. After the brief address, the couple returned home to Windsor, closing the door on the outside world. Soon after, the palace issued a short message confirming that the prince and princess would step back temporarily from public duties to focus on their family. In that moment, the world saw the truth behind the royal facade, that even those born to rule are not immune to the quiet pain of loss. That evening, the palace lights glowed softly through the mist, casting long shadows across the courtyard. Inside, Prince William spent quiet hours with his children, holding to their nightly routines as if normally could protect them from the storm that had settled over their world. He read to them, listened to their laughter, and tried to keep his voice steady. Yet beneath the calm, sorrow lingered. The child who once followed his mother's coffin now faced another painful chapter, this time as a man carrying both the future of the monarchy and the weight of personal loss. The new Prince and Princess of Wales are fully prepared for their roles in the new monarchy. To the public, William had always been the composed heir, the dependable figure who rarely allowed emotion to surface. But behind the walls of Windsor, the facade had fallen away. What remained was not a prince performing duty, but a father drawing strength from the love around him. In that quiet home, grief and tenderness existed side by side. Elsewhere in the palace, King Charles faced his own private battle. The loss that had shaken the nation had struck even deeper within the family. For the monarch, the day's events blurred the line between duty and heartbreak. The man who had spent a lifetime preparing to rule now found himself weighed down by both crown and sorrow. Advisors spoke softly, suggesting the nation needed to hear from him. Notes were written, revised, and rewritten again. Yet nothing sounded right. Every word seemed too polished for the pain he felt. Alone at his desk, he tried to find the balance between his role as king and his reality as a grieving father. The final message that emerged was simple, unguarded, and honest, less the tone of authority, more the voice of shared loss. The cameras were prepared in a grand yet dimly lit room, its walls lined with portraits of monarchs past. When the broadcast began, the world watched in silence. His voice, usually measured and formal, carried an unspoken tremor that revealed what words could not. Across Britain, families stopped to listen. In living rooms and small cafes, people sat motionless, absorbing each pause and breath as if they too were part of the moment. When it ended, there was no applause, no sound, only stillness. For the first time in recent memory, the distance between royalty and the public seemed to disappear. The monarchy, often viewed through the lens of duty and composure, now stood simply as a family in mourning, united with the nation by something both fragile and deeply human. When the broadcast ended, a quiet swept across Britain. Candles flickered, eyes glistened, and for a moment the nation felt the grief of the royal family as its own. King Charles moved with solemn calm, showing that true strength comes from feeling, not titles. Behind the palace gates, the truth emerged, a personal loss that no crown could protect against. In that shared sorrow, the monarchy was human, and the people connected in a way that words or ceremony could never capture. Grief, fragile yet unifying, had become a quiet bridge between them all. Those close to the family described the days before the announcement as heavy with tension. Faces, usually calm and familiar, had grown distant and tired. William's composure had begun to falter, his warmth replaced by quiet strain. Catherine, often the anchor of grace, had retreated into stillness. Behind the scenes, the rhythm of palace life, the schedules, the public smiles, the rehearsed normally had started to break down. The monarchy had always stood as a symbol of endurance, but within those walls it became clear that the burden of constant duty, public scrutiny, and unrelenting expectation had taken its toll. The balance between the personal and the ceremonial had been stretched too thin, and when tragedy struck, the facade finally gave way. In time, the palace confirmed what many had begun to suspect. The family was mourning a deep private loss. It was not something that could be managed or contained, but something that simply had to be endured. Grief had moved through the palace like a quiet shadow, touching everyone it met, from senior advisors to the newest staff members. For once, titles meant nothing. Every person under that roof felt the same weight. Across the country, the response was one of quiet understanding. Instead of judgment, there was empathy. The story was no longer about royalty, but about humanity. Parents saw their own pain reflected in the royal family's sorrow. Children recognized the sadness in William's eyes. For a nation so used to seeing its monarchy as unshakable, this moment revealed a truth often forgotten, that behind the symbols and ceremony live people who hurt, who love, and who break just like everyone else, hope in the quiet. And so, as the palace continued to request privacy, a new kind of connection emerged. The tragedy had not divided the crown and its people, it had brought them closer. The royal family, for all its history and grandeur, stood revealed not as figures of perfection, but as a family trying to heal. Even in royal halls, sorrow has a way of finding its place. No title, no tradition, and no ceremony could protect the family from the kind of pain that humbles every heart. What had unfolded was not about power or image. It was about loss, the kind that reminds everyone that even the most admired lives are still human. Across Britain, that realization spread quietly. The busy streets near Buckingham Palace grew still as people gathered outside the gates, carrying flowers and standing in silence. Strangers who had never met stood side by side, sharing a grief that needed no words. The air was damp and heavy, yet no one seemed to leave. Soon scenes like this appeared everywhere. In Scotland, small crowds placed thistles and white leaves outside royal landmarks. In Wales, church bells echoed through narrow lanes. In Northern Ireland, people lit candles in the rain. The flag above them lowered in respect. It felt as if the entire country was breathing together, holding one shared moment of sadness. Churches across the kingdom opened their doors, offering warmth and reflection. Inside, the glow of candles flickered against quiet faces. Some prayed, others simply sat in silence, taking comfort in being near others who felt the same ache. The message in those moments was simple: grief belongs to everyone, no matter who you are or what you believe. Even those who had once felt distant from the monarchy found themselves moved. Conversations turned gentle. People spoke of empathy, not status. The royal family, usually seen through the lens of duty and ceremony, now appeared like any family struck by loss. Generations who rarely shared the same views stood together, grandparents remembering past reigns, young people thinking of the future. Parents lifted children to see the palace gates, softly explaining that history was unfolding before their eyes. Across cities and towns, the glow of candlelight carried through the night. People left flowers, toys, and handwritten notes tied with ribbons in royal colors that fluttered softly in the wind. Though the grief was heavy, it carried a quiet strength, the kind that unites rather than divides. For the first time in years, the nation felt close, as if the loss had turned millions of hearts toward the same feeling of compassion. Days passed, and the silence at the palace lingered. The flag remained lowered, the gates surrounded by a sea of blossoms. Inside, time seemed to slow. The king kept to his private quarters, his appearances rare. William and Catherine stayed away from the public eye, choosing the comfort of family over ceremony. The royal world, often filled with structure and rhythm, had grown still. The country watched and waited. Newspapers speculated about what this meant for the crown. Commentators debated whether the monarchy could move forward after showing so much vulnerability. Yet, amid all the uncertainty, something quietly shifted. The image of an untouchable royal family had faded, and what remained felt real, fragile, and deeply human. As night fell over London, and the palace glowed softly under the quiet sky, even in sorrow, a small hope remained, a reminder that true strength isn't about crowns or ceremonies, but about feeling. Enduring and moving forward, now the monarchy stands where tradition meets compassion. Its Camilla was never just a stepmother to him. In his eyes, she was someone who played a painful role in his mother's life, and even caused harm behind the scenes. He didn't just hint at it, he said it clearly. He claimed that Camilla was one of the main reasons why Princess Diana suffered for so many years. And that's not something he said lightly. Harry explained how Camilla carefully planned her public image over time. She knew people saw her as the other woman, especially after Diana's emotional interviews where she admitted her marriage had 3 people in it. But instead of stepping back, Camilla slowly worked to change how the public saw her. She went from being disliked to being accepted. And eventually, she was even crowned queen consort. But according to Harry, it was all part of a bigger plan. He described how Camilla used the media to her advantage. She reportedly leaked private information to newspapers, gave hints to reporters, and quietly shaped the stories that were told about her. Harry said she was a master at making herself look good in the public eye, while doing damage behind the scenes. In his words, she was dangerous, not because she was cruel in an obvious way, but because she was skilled at playing the game. She cared more about becoming queen than protecting the people around her. That word dangerous hit people hard. It's not something you expect to hear from a prince talking about someone so close to the throne. And it wasn't just a casual comment. It came from a place of deep emotion and years of watching his family fall apart. For Harry, this wasn't just royal drama. It was personal. He shared how he watched his mother suffer under the pressure of being married to Prince Charles, while knowing there was someone else in the background. Someone who was always present. Someone who, in Harry's view, didn't just wait for her turn, but worked behind the scenes to take it. That pain never left Harry, and now, years later, he's finally speaking up about it. When this interview came out, people everywhere reacted with shock. Many had started to accept Camilla as part of the royal family. Some even grew to like her, but now Harry's words made them pause. People began to ask questions again. Was Camilla the peacemaker she seemed to be, or was she quietly pulling strings all along? What made this moment even more powerful was Harry's tone. He wasn't yelling or trying to start a fight. He was calm, thoughtful, and clear. That made his message even stronger. It wasn't about revenge, it was about truth. A truth he had carried for years, but never felt safe enough to share until now. Harry's revelation has sparked new conversations around the world. Social media was flooded with reactions. Some people praised him for his courage. Others wondered if this would break whatever ties he still had left with his father. But one thing everyone agreed on, this wasn't just gossip. It was a bold and emotional move that forced people to take a hard look at the royal family once again. For Harry, this moment was more than just telling a story. It was about defending his mother's memory. It was about standing up for the pain that had been hidden behind royal smiles for far too long. And by speaking out, he didn't just shake the palace, he shook the entire world. The royal family reacts: shock, silence, and strategy. As soon as Prince Harry's shocking revelations made their way to the public, Buckingham Palace was thrown into a whirlwind of confusion and fear. The royal family, known for their calm and quiet nature, suddenly found themselves in a crisis. Normally, when drama breaks out, they remain silent, keeping their emotions hidden behind smiles and carefully chosen words. But this time, behind the tall gates and golden doors of the palace, there was real panic. Insiders say that King Charles was completely heartbroken. For years, he had worked hard to rebuild Camilla's public image. When the world saw her as the woman who caused pain to Princess Diana, Charles stood by her. He tried to show that she was misunderstood. He married her, gave her a royal title, and eventually made her queen consort. He believed that with time the public would learn to accept and respect her. All right. So, this of course was a slice of history that we witnessed as it unfolded at the Westminster Abbey. King Charles Roman III and Queen Camilla have now been formally crowned in an extravagant ceremony in the British capital. But now with Harry's words out in the open, everything Charles had built was falling apart. People weren't just talking, they were angry. Social media exploded with discussions, hashtags, and opinions. News reporters couldn't get enough of it. And most importantly, people were starting to ask questions that hadn't been asked in years. King Charles wasn't just dealing with a family issue anymore. He was facing a storm that could damage the entire monarchy. Prince William's reaction was different, but just as important. He didn't speak publicly, didn't release a statement, and didn't appear on camera to share his thoughts. He stayed completely silent, but silence can speak volumes. Many people noticed that while he didn't support Harry, he also didn't come forward to defend Camilla. This raised even more questions. Was he secretly agreeing with his brother, or was he simply trying to stay neutral? According to royal insiders, Prince William was deeply conflicted. On one hand, he loves his brother. He remembers the pain they both went through when their mother died. That memory is something they'll always share. But on the other hand, William is the future king. He has sworn loyalty to the crown, and his duty to the royal family comes first. Supporting Harry could mean turning against the institution he's set to lead one day. That's a heavy burden to carry. Meanwhile, other members of the royal family weren't sitting still either. Princess Anne, known for her straightforward and non-nonsense attitude, reportedly called for a private meeting with the king. Prince Edward was there too. Together, they shared their concerns. They weren't just worried about family drama. They were worried about the royal brand, the image of the monarchy. They warned King Charles that public trust was dropping fast. People were losing faith in the palace, and the name Camilla was trending all over the internet. But for all the wrong reasons, day by day, the pressure grew. The newspapers kept digging deeper, and royal watchers all over the world started pointing fingers. Camilla's past actions, which had once been buried or ignored, were being brought back into the spotlight. Stories of her connection to the press, her influence over royal decisions, and her rise to power were now being questioned again. And with Prince Harry's voice added to the mix, it was impossible to pretend nothing had changed. Eventually, royal aides and advisors started having difficult conversations. They gathered behind closed doors trying to come up with a plan. Some suggested releasing a statement. Others said it was better to stay silent and wait for the chaos to pass. But there was one idea that kept coming up again and again. Maybe it was time to distance the crown from Camilla, quietly, softly, and without making a public scene, but clearly. That's when the talk of banning her began. One knew exactly what that would look like. Would they remove her from official events, strip her of royal duties, or ask her to step back from the spotlight completely? All of those options were discussed. Whether they liked it or not, it was clear Camilla was no longer just a private problem. She had become a public disaster. The palace was under pressure like never before. The world was watching. Every move, every silence, and every word was being judged. And with the monarchy's future on the line, they had to act fast. The question was, what would they do next? Camilla's fall from grace, from queen to outcast. For many years, Camilla worked very hard to fix her image in the public eye. In the past, she was often called the other woman, a label that followed her everywhere. People blamed her for breaking up the marriage between Prince Charles and Princess Diana, and for causing pain to the royal family and the world. It was a difficult reputation to shake off, but Camilla didn't give up. Slowly and steadily, she tried to change how people saw her. She started by supporting charities and causes that mattered. Queen Camilla has returned to royal duties after suffering a chest infection. The illness meant she was unable to attend Remembrance Day events. Would she? Even when some fans of Princess Diana still disliked her, Camilla kept going. She understood that winning the public's trust would take time. She was patient and kept working behind the scenes to show a different side of herself, a caring, kind woman who wanted to be part of the family for the right reasons. Over time, it seemed like she had succeeded. The media, which once painted her as the villain, began to soften. Some newspapers praised her efforts and reported on her charity work. Social media, which can be very harsh, started showing moments of support. Camilla was slowly becoming accepted, not just as Prince Charles's wife, but as a royal figure who belonged. She had gone from the shadows of scandal to standing in the spotlight beside the future king. But then everything changed. When Prince Harry's revelations came out, it was like a storm crashing down on Camilla's new life. Suddenly, all the progress she had made seemed to vanish overnight. The very media outlets that once wrote kind stories about her started turning cold. The headlines became harsh and unforgiving again. Journalists dug deep into her past, reopening wounds that many hoped were long healed. Questions appeared everywhere. Why was Camilla ever allowed to become queen? How could someone with such a troubled history hold such an important place in the royal family? Social media exploded with angry comments and heated debates. Fans of Princess Diana voiced their outrage loudly. Some called for Camilla to step down or be removed from royal duties. The internet buzzed with theories and accusations. The public was no longer just curious, they were furious. It was clear that many people had not forgiven her. Despite the growing pressure, Camilla tried to keep her head high. She continued to attend royal events, walking beside King Charles and greeting the public with her usual polite smile. She stayed strong in front of the cameras, showing no sign of weakness. But behind that brave face, something had shifted. The cheers that once followed her appearances had turned into whispers. Instead of applause, there were murmurs of disapproval. At times, even boos could be heard from the crowds. It was a painful change to witness. Inside the palace, the atmosphere was just as tense. Staff members who had once admired Camilla's rise began to pull away. Her schedule started to look emptier. Invitations to important royal functions became fewer. The warmth and respect she had once enjoyed were slowly disappearing. People who used to stand by her side were now keeping their distance. Then the biggest shock came. Camilla was quietly asked to step back from her public duties. Officially, the royal family called it a pause, a temporary break to give her time away from the spotlight. But many people understood it as something much more serious, a soft ban. It was a way to remove her from royal life without causing a scandal or making a big announcement. It was clear the palace was trying to protect the monarchy's reputation by quietly sidelining her. For Camilla, it was like living a nightmare that she had hoped was far behind her. She had worked so hard to move from the shadows into the light, to become a respected queen consort. But now it felt like history was repeating itself, but in reverse. From being the quiet, overlooked woman in the background, she had finally reached the top. Then, with one dramatic turn, she was pushed back into the shadows once again. The journey was painful, confusing, and full of uncertainty. Camilla's fall from grace reminded everyone that royal life is never simple or easy. Even those who seem to have made it can lose everything in a moment. And for Camilla, this chapter of her life was far from over. Is this Prince Harry's revenge or justice for Diana? Ever since Prince Harry's powerful revelations came out, people everywhere have been asking the same questions over and over. Why now? Why did Harry decide to speak up after all these years of silence? Was this his way of getting revenge on Queen Camilla and the royal family? Or was he simply trying to bring justice to his late mother, Princess Diana? These questions are natural. After all, the royal family is known for keeping things quiet behind closed doors. They usually avoid drama in public, handling their problems privately. So when Harry stepped out and spoke so openly, it caught everyone by surprise. The timing felt strange to some, especially since many thought the wounds of the past were slowly healing. Why reopen old pains now? Was it bitterness that pushed him? Or was there something deeper driving him? Those who know Prince Harry personally say it wasn't about anger or revenge at all. Seems to be Harry's upcoming memoir, which continues to be a major source of tension. In fact, experts agree it's the one thing Harry needs to drop if he wants to reunite the royal family. According to close friends and family, this was something much bigger. It was about truth and finally setting the record straight. For Harry, this was a chance to stand up for his mother, the woman who meant everything to him. Diana spent years trapped in a painful world, misunderstood by many, hurt by the media, and isolated within the royal walls. She suffered in ways few could imagine, and Harry, carrying the weight of her memory, wanted to make sure her story was heard and understood. He wasn't out to hurt Camilla personally. He wasn't trying to attack for the sake of drama or personal gain. Instead, Harry wanted the world to see what happened behind the shiny royal gates. He wanted people to realize that beneath the glittering titles, the public smiles, and the fancy ceremonies, there were real human beings with real emotions. People who were hurt, silenced, and pushed to the sidelines. This wasn't just about family drama. It was about revealing a truth that had been hidden for years. Harry wanted to shine a light on the dark corners of the royal story, on the things no one dared to talk about before. He hoped that by sharing his side, he could finally clear the air and bring a sense of justice to his mother's memory. The reaction from royal fans was mixed, and that's understandable. Some supporters praised Harry for his courage. They said it was long overdue for someone in the royal family to speak openly and honestly. For years, people had wondered what went on behind closed doors, and Harry's words gave them a glimpse into that secret world. These fans admired Harry for standing up and telling the truth, believing that honesty was the only way to heal old wounds and move forward. On the other hand, some people felt that Harry should have handled these matters privately. They thought airing family issues in public could only bring more pain and damage the monarchy further. These critics argued that some stories are best kept within the family, solved quietly without dragging everything out into the open. For them, Harry's public revelations seemed like an unnecessary blow to the royal family's reputation. No matter which side people took, one thing became very clear. Harry's words had a huge impact. They shook the royal family in ways no one expected. What was once hidden in silence was now out in the open, forcing the family to face the consequences. The royal palace, known for its careful image and control over information, suddenly found itself under intense scrutiny. For the first time in a long time, the royal family was forced to respond not just to the public, but to a very personal and painful story told by one of their own. The shock waves from Harry's revelations were felt in every corner from Buckingham Palace to social media and beyond. Maybe, just maybe, this was exactly the wake-up call the royal family needed. Sometimes the only way to fix something broken is to confront the truth head-on, no matter how uncomfortable it is. Harry's bravery in speaking out might open doors to healing, change, and understanding that have been long overdue. This moment could be the start of something new, a chance for the family to rethink how they handle pain, secrets, and loyalty. For Harry, it was more than just words. It was a mission to honor his mother's legacy by telling the truth. So, was it revenge or justice? Perhaps it was a bit of both. But above all, it was Harry's way of making sure that his mother's story was finally told and never forgotten. What happens now? A palace without Camilla. Now that Camilla has stepped back from public life and the royal family is facing a storm of criticism, the big question on everyone's mind is what happens next. What does the future hold for the palace without Camilla in the spotlight? This situation is unlike anything the royal family has dealt with before, and the uncertainty is palpable. King Charles finds himself in a very difficult position. On one hand, he deeply loves Camilla. She has been by his side through thick and thin, and he stood firmly by her when the world was against her. He fought hard to rebuild her reputation and even made her queen consort, which was a historic moment. But now, with the recent revelations from Prince Harry shaking public opinion, Charles is caught in a tough spot. Does he try to bring Camilla back into the royal spotlight, risking further backlash, or does he quietly let her fade away to protect the image of the monarchy as a whole? So far, the king has not made any clear public statements about Camilla's future. His silence speaks volumes. Those close to the palace say he is deeply torn. He understands the importance of family loyalty, but he also knows that the survival of the monarchy depends on public trust and respect. Sometimes that means making hard and painful decisions. even if it means distancing someone you love. For now, Camilla remains almost invisible to the public. She's not attending events